Erie. Happy Monday. The sun is shining as we welcome you into Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. Paul Adamczak here, filling in for Nick Artman once again today, but I'm not alone. Chiming in via satellite this morning, I'm very pleased to have our sports insider Isaac Petcash with us. IP, how was your weekend, brother?
Oh, it was wonderful. I was on the golf course for most of it. So, as you can imagine, my excitement, I didn't get to play, but my goodness, I got to watch golfers and showcase what actually hitting a decent ball looks like. So, I was in learning mode over the weekend is what I was in.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Beautiful weekend to be on the golf course as well.
Yeah, and it's great today. We were saying before the show, I feel like we're finally getting into summer. You know, we know that the early part of May can be volatile. We know that. We never know what it's going to be at. We're finally turning a corner. It's finally nice. It seems like we've got the relaxing summer ahead of us. I probably just jinxed it there, but hey, better days ahead. We can actually put the snowblowers away, I feel like.
Okay, that's safe. I did put mine away like 2 weeks ago when I dragged the lawnmower out as my yard was a foot tall. I was like, okay, it's probably safe.
I'll tell you what, man, that's the crazy thing, too, is like in May, I don't know about you, my lawn grows like at exponential pace. I mean, I mowed my grass on yesterday morning. I already think it needs mowed again.
Yep. I mowed mine on Thursday, took off for Akron on Friday. I got back this morning. I was like, dang, it needs it again, man. 3 days.
It's
3
good,
days.
dude. It never stops.
Never. Relaxing summer, he said. Yeah. Also with us this morning, our award-winning producer, the great and powerful Rich Smith. How are you, brother?
Not too bad. A beautiful weekend at camp this weekend.
I was going to say, finally camping. Yeah. This is weather that even I will camp in.
I was like, where was this weather last weekend? You know,
the old saying, April showers bring May flowers.
Yes.
But it's been more like April showers, May showers, June showers, and so on and so forth.
No matter what, if you're camping somewhere, it will rain at some point.
Where were you this weekend?
Just, scout camp.
Meadville?
Yep.
But it got in the 80s in Meadville.
It was nice.
Beautiful, man.
It was nice.
That. I love that. We have a wonderful show for you folks today. Let's get into it. Don't forget, you can listen to us anytime, anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to give us a follow or shout out on Twitter at FC Sports Talk. I'm at RufusP88, and Isaac's handle is at IJP Broadcasting. Today, we're recapping another week in Big D10 sports. We'll get into the Gannon golf team's recent success. Plus, later in the show, we'll talk about those Cleveland Cavaliers and then play our favorite game, Overreaction Monday. So let's get into the North Shore Rewind. Rich, run it back. All right, before we get into our players and teams of the week, Isaac, I did want to mention at the top of the broadcast, the district track meet is this weekend at Slippery Rock University. So very much looking forward to that. The kind of the end of season, the exclamation point on a long spring for a lot of athletes. So I'll let you go first. You have a team of the week. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to make a mention, too, on when it comes to the track and field meet. That is a awesome day. Like, even if you're not a huge fan and you're not around the sport, I know you are. There are many that aren't. Just going there and spending an hour, and the thing that I always find interesting when I was going and covering it for the news is you stand up in the stands and you don't know where to look. That's the wonderful part about it is, on the right side here, you've got people doing the triple jump. On the left side here, you're starting the 100-meter dash. Out in the field there, people are doing shot put. It's awesome because no matter where you look, there's something going on. So we're going to talk a lot about that next Monday. That's going to be really exciting. But I'm going to start with my baseball and softball team of the week. For baseball, I think the choice is obvious. It's Fairview. They just clinched the Region 5 championship this past week. They have, for the better part of the last decade, really dominated the region and, of course, have been to the state playoffs a lot in the last few seasons, and I think again it's a testament to the leadership that Coach Spinelli brings over there. I want to say too, Fairview has been a team that has been dominant with pitching. Caleb Sklensky's really had the best season out of anybody on that staff. But I will say this: if there is a really good feel-good story this season, it has to be Vinny Campoli. The senior, the triple sports star with football, basketball, and baseball. This is a guy that for 2 straight years has had season-ending injuries that has kept him out of one, if not multiple, of the sports that he plays. And to get to see him back, he hasn't thrown a lot this season, but just to get to see him back and be in a situation where he can help this team win near the end of the season, it is so awesome to get to watch. And, Vinny's just a great guy. I've interviewed him a bunch of times. He's a wonderful standout person. He's going to do great things. It's just, Paul, it's great to see him in a situation where he can actually play the game he loves as opposed to being hurt. And so I think, for Fairview, they're really happy to have him, and it's just a great story for Vinny Campoli.
Yeah, great athlete, great quarterback, and like you said, just a couple of heartbreaking ends of seasons in the last couple of years. Really love to see him compete on a high level and kind of not even maximize, but get able to use his talents for his high school. So we love to see that. And then you mentioned Coach Spinelli, one of the greatest dudes, not just coaches, one of the greatest dudes in District 10.
He's awesome. His mustache is on point, too. All right, I'm going to go to softball. I'm going to go outside of Erie County for my team of the week, because this team has surpassed and continues to play better than a team that has dominated the region historically in the last few seasons, and that's Cochranton Cardinals softball. Cochranton has historically had great baseball and softball programs, especially in Little League. I remember there was always a team that in Little League and the District 10, the District Championship, we always would have to play. Cochranton softball, Paul, has not lost since it was snowing. Their only loss of the season was back in March to West Middlesex in a game that came down to the wire. They haven't lost since then. They've had multiple shutouts. They just put 24 on Mercyhurst Prep on Saturday. And I want to shout out two huge games this week.
Okay.
There are multiple huge games. The first one is Cochranton and Cambridge Springs. That's happening today at 4 o'clock. The weather should be great. That's for a battle of the top of Region 2. If Cochranton wins that, they're almost assuredly going to win the region, or at least clinch a share of it. Cambridge Springs wins, they would be both at 8-1 in the region. And then how about on Wednesday when General McLean and McDowell baseball go head-to-head? I cannot wait for this game.
Yes.
Second game of the year, McDowell won the first one, but the Trojans, who had the region lead heading into the weekend, lost it because Cathedral Prep crushed them for the second time this year. So General McLean has a chance, if they can win this game on Wednesday and clean up the games that they have on Monday and Tuesday, they're going to win the region. And for Tom Payton and crew, who, he told me last year, he's like, look, my team is young. My team, most of them are coming back. I know what I've got, and I know we can compete. This is a GM chance that has an opportunity to win a region outright with teams such as McDowell, Cathedral Prep, even Harbor Creek in that region. So it's going to be really interesting on Wednesday. I cannot wait for that game, and I may try to make it out for that game if I have time, because that's going to be a heck of a game.
In a week filled with exciting ends to essentially spring sports, we're getting to the best time in spring sports in high school. I've got a couple of teams of the week for you as well. I'm going to start with the Cathedral Prep boys tennis team, specifically Bradley Ing. The freshman didn't lose a game over two number one singles matches for the Ramblers, who won District 10's Class 2A team tournament at Westwood. Also, Gavin Ferretti, former PIAA's gold medalist, won his second District 10 2A singles tournament. And then the tandem of Ty Hulick and Mike Ferraro, seniors, rare unseeded champions for any District 10 tournament when they won 2A doubles bracket at Westwood this weekend. And then, of course, Corey track and field boys and girls. Nolan Carey set the javelin record with an attempt of 192 feet 10 inches at the Erie County Classic. And then his teammate, Matty Liofsky, also from Corey, freshman, set the Erie County Classic long jump record at an even 18 feet. I'm going to have a really truncated 2-minute drill here, about a 90-second drill, and we're off. Over 24 Gannon University student-athletes were honored at Saturday's Founders Day Awards, including Ryan Barclay, Lily Fritz, and Andrea Maybach. The athletic department posted a 3.41 GPA this fall. Edinburgh's Bernadette Zucchina set a PSAC championship meet record in the 400-meter dash with a 54.77 NCAA provisional time. The Penn State Baron baseball claimed its second straight AMCC title, beating Alfred State 8-2. Evan Bromley earned his sixth win, while Jack Baumgartel notched a 4-inning save. Mercyhurst University has named Erie native and Mercyhurst Prep graduate Zach Helsley as the first head coach of its new women's flag football program. Mercyhurst University alum and former football captain Helsley called the opportunity a full circle moment. The Lakers, who will operate as an independent, will debut this fall with a 7-on-7 format as women's flag football rapidly expands nationwide. And let's finish it up. The Erie Seawolves went 4-2 last week against the Altoona Curve at UPMC Park. Highlights included back-to-back walk-off wins on Wednesday and Thursday, with Jake Holton delivering a 2-run homer in the 12th inning and Trey Cruz following up with a game-winning single. On Friday, Erie's bullpen combined for a 7-0 shutout, featuring 4 scoreless innings and 5 strikeouts from Austin Bergner. However, the Seawolves dropped the final 2 games of the series, including a 3-2 loss on Sunday after starter Troy Melton allowed 3 early runs. Erie now stands at 21-12 as they head to Richmond. Fast-moving first segment, as always. 9:15 is our time here locally. Big second segment coming up. That was the North Shore Rewind. We'll dig into Gannon Golf coming up next. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. All right, welcome back into Flagship City Sports Talk on this beautiful Monday morning. Paul Adams, Zach Rich Smith, Isaac Petcash joining us via the interwebs. Well, it was a dramatic weekend at Whispering Words for the Gannon men's golf team, and not without a small, tiny, itty-bitty controversy. After 54 holes of back-and-forth play at the NCAA Division II Atlantic East Regional, Gannon and Davison Elkins finished deadlocked at 24 over par. A playoff was discussed, but with daylight fading and a quirky NCAA tiebreaker in play, it was Davison Elkins who were declared the regional champ. The good news, both teams punched their ticket to the national championships in Florida, which is going to be May 20th to 24th at Palm Beach Gardens in Florida.
PGA
Isaac,
National. It's a great course.
I was going to say a PGA course. Florida weather, I think, is pretty good this time of year. They should have a good time down there. Isaac, I read the article this morning, which Bob wrote. So I'm gonna kind of give it to you as I understand. Sure. But you were there, so you fill in the gaps for me. We're tied up. Okay, it's cold to start the day. We got a 90-minute delay. Both days we're at this thing. Mm-hmm. We're winding up at the end of the day. We've got a to-the-stroke tie. Now at this point, the layman, myself, would think, okay, this goes to a playoff hole. But it was considered, it was going to happen, and then it wasn't going to happen. What a phone call was made by someone we're not sure who made the call. We're not sure who the call was to specifically, other than the NCAA. Walk us through what happened that Gannon actually tied for first, but is going to end up walking away in the annals of history with a second.
Sure. So I want to, first of all, put a disclaimer out there that I was there. We were in the midst of it, and some of us still don't know the full extent of everything that happened. So I'm going to fill you in as best I can with what I know. So I want to start by taking you back to the 18th hole. So there was a lot of drama right at the end. We knew on the 18th hole in the very last group, Rasmus Seppinen, who came in second overall as an individual, had a great week. He needed to make a birdie putt on the final hole to force a tie. had about a 15-foot birdie putt, sunk it. The Davis and Elkins kid who ended up winning the individual championship missed his putt. So, you got two teams that are completely equal. We walk off the 18th hole, and, I'm immediately talking to the other camera guys that are around. I said, all right, we're going to a playoff. Well, there's ruling in the NCAA rules, for specifically to determine a team advancing to nationals. Because remember, in the Atlantic East Regional, there are 3 teams that can advance. So if it had been a battle for third, the rule states that the tiebreaker would have gone to the aggregate score of the golfer score that you dropped. So you play 5 golfers in this tournament. You only take 4 scores. So it would then go to the person whose score that you didn't take, in which case Gannon's score was worse. So Davis and Elkins would win the tiebreaker. So, from the hearings that we had talked about, everyone had determined, if at least at the patio that we were standing on, that there wasn't going to be a playoff. Well, then I see head coach Scott Stano run across the parking lot and speak to what I believe was a rules official with the NCAA that was there. And within a span of 5 minutes, we're standing there, and Coach Stano goes back to his team, and he says, guys, we're going to hole 11. We're going to a playoff.
Okay.
So evidently there was a decision made at some point in that juncture that there was going to be a playoff. And of course, when you go to a playoff, the way it works in NCAA is you play all of your golfers, and then you take the aggregate score of whatever those the scores are. So
they would play all 5 golfers, and then you take the top 4 once again.
So we drive to hole 11. We take all the Gannon student athletes on a cart. We get there. So I'm sitting there on the 11th hole, the tee box, with the team standing there. Davis and Elkins has not arrived yet, presumably because they're frustrated because they thought they had won via the tiebreaker, and it's now determined that there's going to be a playoff. Then, about 5 minutes after that, Coach Stano gets a phone call. I don't know who it was from. Our belief is that it was somebody from the NCAA, and it ended up being determined that there wasn't going to be a playoff. Now, there were a number of reasons why this could have happened. Of course, number one is you could say, well, we're going to take the way the tiebreaker works, and we're going to give it to Davis and Elkins because via the tiebreaker rules, they won via the tiebreaker, and that's that. The other thing that I think had to be coming into play here, too, is when we were standing on the 11th tee box, it was almost 8:30. It was getting dark.
Right.
And so the big question that you had to answer was, could you have played a hole with all of your golfers in about 10 minutes? Because that's about how much time you had before it realistically got too dark that you couldn't finish. So, we went from no playoff to a playoff to no playoff in about a span of 10 minutes. And to your point, Davis and Elkins and Gannon end up tying, but because of the tiebreaker, Davis and Elkins ends up as the top seed heading into Florida from the Atlantic East region. So there was just a lot of drama that happened on Saturday. And I will say, Paul, that it was an incredible day of golf. Gannon came into the day with the lead. They lost the lead with a couple of difficult holes at the end. Rasmus Seppänen played an incredible last 3 holes to be able to get it back to a tie. I personally would have loved to have seen a playoff. I understand the timing of things and whatnot. I actually made an argument. I said to Bob Shreve and Taylor Brown, our other sports information director, as we were standing on the patio, why not have a 1v1? Rasmus Seppänen and Aiden Talent from Davis and Elkins were the two top individual golfers.
Right.
Why not have them just replay the 18th hole and have them go one-on-one? Again, I understand it doesn't work that way, but I will say that it was a dramatic-filled ending after everything happened, but what happened on the course was incredible as well. These are two very evenly matched teams that are probably frustrated they left some things out there, and when you think about it, you had 5 golfers who played 54 holes, and in the end, you completely tie. So there are a lot of ifs and whats, but the way that it went down on Saturday, just a wonderful ending. And the biggest part of all of this is that both teams are getting a chance to move on, which is what really matters.
Yes.
And I know you want the regional championship, but you're still at Florida and you're still heading to PGA National. And that's something that I think that Coach Stano will probably be looking at this morning when he talks to his team at some point today.
Sure. And I think that's the biggest point is that I think we should get across, Gannon is going to Florida. They qualified. Top 3 go. They were given second. They tied for first. They're going to go down as the 2 seed from our region. What an unbelievable weekend in golf. They have a 5-stroke deficit after day 1. They roared back with a tournament low 289 on day 2. They grab a 6-shot lead. Then on Saturday, they shoot a 300 while Davis and Elkin shoots a 294. So they come back with a tie. What an unbelievable series of events, the ups and downs, and then to finish with a tie that. Do you think Scott Stano is going to use this as some fuel for the fun? Hey, listen, you guys get a shot 8 days from now to play these guys again. How much does that fire up this coach? How much does this fire up this team?
I think they're going to be really excited to go to Florida if they weren't already. And admittedly, and a couple of guys on the roster would admit this to you, they did not have their best day on Saturday. Mattia Perini, who was their number 1 seed heading into the tournament, probably had his worst 9 holes that he's had in quite some time. I know that he's going to be excited to get back at it. Elijah Rupert, who shot a 73 on Friday despite 6 putting a hole, he was able to kind of scratch and claw his way back, but he struggled in the first 9 holes on Saturday. Rasmus Seppänen really did a great job of keeping them in it, as did Giovanni Di Lorenzi, who had 3 birdies in the final 9 holes. So I think there's still some things that Gannon believes they left out there, which is a great thing, because if you're a coach, what's the age-old saying? The best way to win, or in this case, tie to win something, is to get the W, but know you have things that you can clean up. And I think that this is something that Gannon will be excited about as they get ready to go to Nationals. And again, it's a motivated, hungry lineup. They've been here before. They won the region last year. They know what Nationals is. It's a different leg up in competition. And I think you'll see the most motivated form of this Gannon team going into next week when they take on a really, really difficult course down in Palm Beach.
It's going to be crazy. I did want to hit on a couple of the top golfers. You mentioned Seppänen, second place individual finish. He finished with 214, which is a -2. 2 straight days of 71. He birdied 6 of 8 par 5s on those first 2 days. You mentioned Giovanni Di Lorenzi, tied 5th overall, shot a 221. That's a +5. Rounds of 75, 73, and 73. And then Mattia Perini, maybe the best player on the team, tied 11th. He was 224 +8. Strong couple of first days. Finished that final day with a round of 79. He would like that back. Looking ahead to Palm Beach Gardens, PGA course. What kind of course is PGA National, and how does this team's style of play fit that layout?
Yeah, well, remember, PGA National is famous for the bear trap, right? 15, 16, and 17. We see it when the PGA players play it earlier in the year. It is a really difficult course to be able to score on, and that's something that I think you're going to hear on as you go through this week and you talk about the course. Obviously, I've never been there. I'm not extremely familiar, but if you
any golf course with what's called a bear trap,
right.
That's
I think the realistic part of it is if I were coaching the team or a team or I were playing on this, the one thing that I would want to get across is you have to be sure that you take advantage of scoring early on in the round, because the course gets harder and harder as things go on. And again, if you count the bear trap plus the final hole, there's really not a lot of opportunity for you to pick up birdies at the end of this course. And so I think if you're Gannon, what you're going to really have to do is, like they did on day 2, race out with some big birdies. Try to be a little bit aggressive, maybe even on day 1. Try to see if you can get some birdies in the early holes, and then, essentially play for par, is what I would do as a player on the final 4, 5, 6 holes, and that gives you an opportunity. Again, I want to reiterate what Coach Stano says all the time. You cannot win or have success at a big tournament on the first day, but you can certainly lose it and be out. And I think that's something Gannon's going to want to have to toe the line between, is how aggressive do you play and how, conservative do you play, given that you don't want to be super behind really early on. But again, these guys are seasoned pro golfers. They know what they need to do, and I think you're going to get a lot of great golf from these guys. Probably the best that you've seen from them going into next week.
They got a week off, and then they'll travel to Florida and play some more golf. So best of luck to them. We're not done talking about them. I want to thank our sponsors, Quick Fill, Dauber Auto Supply, and John's Wildwood Pizza. When we come back, we'll try to lighten up a somber morning in Northeast Ohio. Are the Cavs done for? We'll discuss and hopefully find some answers. Stick around. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. All right, I have some fun music to come into. I love that. Welcome back to Flagship City Sports Talk. Paul Adams, Zach Rich Smith, Isaac Petcash joining us online. We're in our third block. Let's talk the Cleveland Cavaliers. Folks, after a stellar 64-win regular season, second best season in regular season in Cavs history, they now find themselves teetering on the brink of elimination. 121-101 defeat in Game 4 against the Indiana Pacers has left them trailing 3-1 in the series. That loss was compounded by a significant injury to star guard Donovan Mitchell, who exited at halftime, tried to go in the third quarter, just didn't have it, left with an ankle issue in his left ankle. So now as the series shifts back to Cleveland for Game 5, the Cavaliers face a must-win scenario to keep their playoff hopes alive after an embarrassing 20-point loss. Not only did the Cavs trail by as many as 44 points, the largest deficit they faced in a playoff game since the league started tracking that back in 1998, but those defensive adjustments unraveled, and the key injuries are piling up at the worst possible time. Isaac, the Cavs were down by 41 points at halftime. Is this series over for Cleveland, or can they find a way to extend it without a healthy Donovan Mitchell?
Well, it's amazing to me because for 2 straight weeks I've kept the same chyron at the bottom of your screen of the Cavs done. And last week, last week I wasn't willing to go there with them down 2-0. This week I am. This series is over. I don't see a situation where you can come back from what has happened. Really, you take out Game 3 has happened the first couple, 1, 2, and 4. A couple of things stood out to me last night. There are a lot of stats that you can get into the weeds in. The first one that sticks out to me is Cleveland doubled Indiana at the free throw line with attempts. They shot 40 free throws. It didn't matter. They still out-rebounded the Pacers, despite the fact that it seemed like Indiana was grabbing every offensive board. It didn't matter. What sticks out to me, and I think that this is something that obviously will be tested, right, with Donovan Mitchell potentially being out. All season long, the Cavaliers had one of the best benches in the entire NBA, right?
Agreed.
With
yes.
Ty Jerome, with DeAndre Hunter.
They had 2 guys who you could have named
Yep.
Sixth Man of the Year, and nobody would have blinked.
You throw Isaac Okoro in there, Sam Merrill. Let me read to you the stats from last night, what some of these guys were while they were on the floor. Cleveland with Dean Wade was a -13. With DeAndre Hunter was a -9. They were a -4 with Ty Jerome. They were a -10 with Sam Merrill. The only one that was really good in that category was Isaac Okoro, but then again, it was really in the fourth quarter on mop-up duty. Right. Indiana has figured out a way to, number one, neutralize Cleveland's offensive ability to pass the ball around and go from high to low. Because Jared Allen and Evan Mobley have been, in large parts, invisible in this series. And the other thing is, Cleveland doesn't know how to handle Indiana defensively. They just don't. How many times yesterday, you go back to that stretch at the end of the first half when Indiana made their final 7 shots, none of them were contested. I mean, they had their big guys. I mean, like, it's amazing to me. Pascal Siakam hit back-to-back wide-open threes as a guy who probably would run a 40-yard dash in 7.5 seconds. and I just look at it and I think to myself, I don't know whether it's the strategy, whether Indiana was just so well prepared for this series, or whether it's the fact that the Cavs just aren't used to being out of rhythm much this season. And maybe we should have saw this coming, because when Cleveland's lost games this season, some of them have been ugly. But I will tell you what, I was really optimistic after Game 3. I figured, okay, the ship's rightened. They had a couple of tough games. Game 2, they should have probably won. But this Indiana team, man, I'll put it to you this way. If they keep shooting the way they've shot in this series, they're going to win the whole thing. They're going to beat Boston or New York in a sweep, and they're going to win the NBA championship because I'm not sure I've seen a team shoot as well as Indiana has in this series. And if you're Cleveland, can you bank on the fact that they're going to be bad shooting for 3 straight games? I certainly can't.
No, agreed on all fronts. And even if Mitchell guts it out in Game 5, I think the series has revealed cracks that go deeper than just his availability. Indiana's ability to control the tempo. You mentioned Spicy P, Pascal Siakam getting wide open threes. Cleveland went to a zone defense in that Game 3, and then Indiana basically attacked that, and Cleveland was really slow to get out of it. Yep. You've got a 3-1 hole, a hobbled star, no momentum. It is an especially tough climb against a confident, extremely deep Pacers squad that, like you said, just seems to be hitting shots with regularity. I think I said it last week after game one. The number of shots that just Cleveland would battle, they'd get it back to one, they'd get up by 1 or 2, and Indiana would just hit a big shot. Okay, the team just shoots great for a game. All right, well, that has extrapolated now to 4 games. Good defensive adjustments in game 3. We saw Darius Garland finally make his way back. He had 21 points last night, but obviously without the tandem of he and Donovan Mitchell, that wasn't enough. I know you mentioned the plus or minus. I've got Donovan Mitchell stats in front of me. In 2 quarters, he was minus 35. Yeah. I mean, that's your best player, bar none. Nobody would argue that. And he's minus 35 in 2 quarters. I don't want to approach this segment as if saying that Cleveland season is over, because it's not. In about 300 chances, there have been 13 times where a team in the NBA has come back from a 3-1 hole. Obviously, one of them was that 2016 Cavs team, which we all remember. But I'll ask you this. If you're GM Mike Gansey and president of basketball operations Kobe Altman, how do you approach the offseason? Is this roster construction good enough to compete? Even if the Cavs bow out in 5 or 6 games, do you blow it up? Do you double down? What do you do? How do you approach the offseason? This
is what stinks to me as as someone who would be a Cavs fan, because this roster is constructed, I think, in a really, really good way.
You would have thought so.
The first thing that I will say is this. And I know that I'm going to get a lot of backlash to this because these 2 guys have been awesome in the regular season, but have disappeared during the playoff. You really have to determine whether Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are the guys that can take you for a run. They have disappeared in this series.
Completely gone.
And you know, 5 years ago, when Cleveland was going through the really difficult stretch, right, post LeBron, they're trying to build up their team, they're going through head coaches. Getting to the second round would have been tremendous, right? And I think we hold different teams in different spots in their rebuild to different standards.
I think you would have said at the beginning of this season, if you said first-year head coach Kenny Atkinson takes this team to the second round of the playoffs, I think you'd be happy with it. But then they win 60-plus games and they get the number 1 seed.
Yeah, but I didn't even, you know, I get Kenny Atkinson being in his first year, but remember that this is a team last year that, you know, you could make an argument could have gone to the NBA Finals if not for the injuries. I look at the way that Mobley and Allen have disappeared in this series, and my question is number one, how durable is this team? You mentioned the injuries last season. They were hurt. Donovan, of course, got hurt last night. We know Garland only came back midway through the series, and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen have done nothing. I just think those 2 guys are such huge players with the Cavs. Everyone puts the spotlight on Garland and Mitchell, and deservedly so. Mm-hmm. But when Cleveland's firing on all cylinders, they can get the ball to Jarrett Allen inside. He's not going to miss. He had the highest field goal percentage in the NBA this season. Evan Mobley is a dual-threat guy who can play to the outside, who can drive the basketball in tight. And those 2 guys have been eliminated from the conversation. So the narrative for Cleveland, I think, is going to start to become, are they just not durable in the playoffs? And I think we're going to really see in Game 5, 6, and potentially 7 if that's going to change. But, you know, you mentioned the offseason, Paul. I'm not really sure what you do if you're the Cavs, because I think you still have a great roster. But I would be surprised. I'd be surprised if the entire roster looks the same next year and all 5 of the starters are back. Because you can't have this kind of disappearance in the playoffs after a 64-win campaign and expect things to be the exact same.
I agree 100%. And I wasn't ready to say it last Monday. And I think I asked you basically the core 4, who would be the first guy to go. I think I'm ready to say today. And it's unfortunate because I'm a fan of him personally, but I think Jarrett Allen is probably the guy that most likely gets shopped to leave. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think it's because you know Evan Mobley can be a 2-way star and be, you know, again, and be really successful. I mean, he's got such a great demeanor, right? I mean, he's been somebody that has been such a cornerstone piece for the Cavs. But I mean,
I agree. I don't like it, but yeah,
you look in this series. If you take away Game 2, he just hasn't had a presence, and you know whether it's that he needs to add.
He barely played last night. He only finished with 2 points?
Yeah, 2 points in 20 minutes. I mean, he just wasn't a factor. And you know, I think in the NBA, as much as teams like to shoot the three ball, think of the teams that are currently in the NBA playoffs, in some parts of the bracket. You've got Minnesota, that's not a big 3-point shooting team. Golden State has, without Stephen Curry, has become an inside, track sort of a team. At the Boston-New York series, these are two backstreet brawl bullies that don't like to really play that pretty. I mean, I know Boston shoots a three a lot, but they can drive inside too. So you have to have a presence in tight and with a big man. And, maybe if Cleveland decides that they can only keep one of Mobley or Allen, that they get rid of Jarrett. But I just, I hate to look in the offseason when the season's not over yet. But you got to see something out of these two guys in the next 3 games, in my opinion, to feel really confident about them in future playoff runs, because we know they can play in the regular season. And the big thing I will say too, Paul, is this, and if we're running out of time, I apologize, but
oh no, you're good.
But remember, at the end of the season, when the Cavs clinched the number 1 seed, there was a lot of talk about, okay, they're going to be sitting guys, they're going to be resting guys, all that, and justifiably so. They should have. Jarrett Allen was the one guy they did not sit for every single game, because he wanted to, I think, play a part in all 82 games.
Wanted to be in 82.
You
Correct.
wonder if now, looking back on it, Kenny Atkinson potentially regrets that decision. I'm not saying that Jarrett's tired. I'm not saying he's washed. He's still a young guy. But could maybe a couple of games that he played 20 minutes in, that rest helped him come playoff time? Because keep in mind, Cleveland played Indiana twice near the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Would it have been nice to not show any of your cards as opposed to maybe showing 2 of your cards? I think that's something maybe that you'll look back and contemplate when you get to the end of this playoff run.
I don't disagree with you. I want to ask a question to the listeners who can find us at Gem City Sports Podcast Network on Facebook. What's been the most frustrating part of the series? Turnovers, third quarter collapses, or the lack of physicality? All right, when we get back, we'll play everyone's favorite game, Overreaction Monday. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. Flagship City Sports Talk on a beautiful Monday morning in May. Paul Adamczak here, filling in for Nick Artman today. I'm alongside Rich Smith and Isaac Pedcash. We have come to the final segment of our day. It is everyone's favorite game, not just mine. It's called Overreaction Monday, where we come up with a list of hot takes, and then the other guy will say whether we believe it's an overreaction or not an overreaction. We stole the whole segment from Isaac, and I usually defer to him. But Isaac, I wrote a couple this week, as I tend to do.
I love it. I love it.
And I want to start with one of mine because I think it's good. Hopefully I'm stealing one of yours because you stole one of mine last week, so I'm going to take this away from you. Here is my overreaction or not an overreaction statement. The Pittsburgh Steelers have now lost their leading passer, leading rusher, and leading receiver from the 2024 season. That means the 2025 season will be Mike Tomlin's first to end under 500 and will lead to his departure.
I will say this. I think everything you mentioned would make sense, but I'm going to go based off of history, and history shows me there's a 0% chance of that happening, so I'm calling that an overreaction.
Okay.
Look, you know, Mike, you can't underestimate Mike Tomlin's ability as a head coach in the regular season. We just talked about this with the Cavs. He will find a way to get this team scratching and clawing away to above 500. I just get so damn frustrated because every time we talk about the subject, I think, what if this team had a decent offense, right? What if this team can actually put together 23, 24 points a game? But, you know, I look at the way that this team ended the year last year. It was clearly a crash and burn effort. I think they're going to win enough games early in the season to be remotely competitive. And it's never happened. So until it happens that he has a losing season, I can't sit here and say that it's going to happen. So, and when it comes to his departure, he's never getting fired. I've just determined that right now.
Well, that's why I said lead to his departure
fired.
And not him getting fired. I was like, this is going to be a mutual decision. I agree, but he leaves.
No, it's an overreaction. I understand where you're coming from. I think your sensing makes sense if that makes any sense to you. But yeah, I think that's an overreaction just because we haven't seen it yet.
All right, that's fair. I do think the receiving core, which could not have possibly gotten worse, I think with the addition of DK Metcalf, actually got better. The running back room is interesting. Najee out. The kid from Iowa, whose name is escaping me at the moment, Caleb Johnson.
Yep.
I think is about same. The quarterback play, though, until the last shoe drops, is my big question mark right now. It was, like you said, crash and burn at the end of last season. So it couldn't have been much worse, but boy, I'm looking at that very, very thin QB depth chart there. I don't like any of the options.
Well, no.
Oh boy. I don't know. I feel like I have to warm up the arm here because I might get a call from the Steelers. It is that bad in Pittsburgh right now.
Well, let me throw one at you before you go to your next one, because I think this parlays really well with what you were talking about, because you mentioned, okay, they drafted a running back, but their number one rusher is gone. Of course, George Pickens is out the door to Dallas. We don't know who the quarterback is. But you know what Pittsburgh loves is they love nostalgia. Specifically, they love being able to beat teams in their own division, right? They've got a rivalry with Baltimore that's gone back the test of time. Cincinnati has had some nasty playoff games with Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And, of course, the dreaded Cleveland Browns. And, you know, Pittsburgh, I think, on offense tries to go with quick fixes, right? We think they're going to go with Aaron Rodgers, whether it's the right or the wrong move. But the right or wrong move, I think this is something that would be interesting. I think there's a certain player that's been cast aside that Pittsburgh would love to bring in and just rub in the faces of their rivals, because I think Nick Chubb is going to wear black and gold this season and will be signed by Pittsburgh as RB2, but eventually will end up being RB1 because I think he's still got some juice left in the tank.
Boy, that is interesting. And you want to talk about a motivated Nick Chubb. One of the things I heard over the weekend that ever since the draft, when the Browns took two running backs, Judkins and Devin Neal? It's the kid from Kansas, I believe. They took two running backs in the draft. The Cleveland Browns have not heard from Nick Chubb since day 3 of the draft. So he's a little upset, I'm sure. Signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers would obviously give him a nice opportunity to stick it to his former team. But I think it's a bit of an overreaction only because I disagree with how much juice is left in the tank for Nick Chubb. Never really got all the way back last year. He's basically gone through two-year injuries, and I'm in the camp of an ACL is a 2-year injury. You can play a year after, but you're not the same. It's a 2-year thing. He's gone through two-year injuries in a 2-year period. And I like him because he's a high caliber person. But if the Browns don't want one of their most favorite players of all time back in the locker room this year, it's a tough sell to me to think that he's going to go elsewhere and compete this season. But boy, oh boy, I like the idea of having a motivated, shall we say, a little cheesed off Nick Chubb lining up against the brown and orange.
I think the biggest advantage that it would be for Pittsburgh would be red zone offense. We know the
Sure.
Steelers have struggled in that in previous seasons. They struggled in it again last year. It was something they tried to fix, and they marginally improved, but it wasn't what you would expect. You put that guy inside the 20, and I'm not saying that Nick Chubb is Derrick Henry, but we've seen what Derrick Henry's been able to do at 30 plus with Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like even if you can get 500 yards out of the guy and 5 touchdowns, those 5 touchdowns could be the difference in the red zone or in close games and whatnot. And so, my thing is he's not going to cost a lot of money.
True.
Why not? Go get him, see what happens. It's worst case scenario, you play him for a year and he doesn't come back. But I just think that'd be a big signing for Pittsburgh because you take a big swing at a guy who, if he doesn't work out, no big deal. You let him go. If he does work out, great. You've got one of the top 5 running backs pre-injury on your roster and playing well.
And what a guy to sit and learn from if you're Caleb Johnson. I think the biggest thing he would bring to that running back room right now, as the knee is pass protection. It's so underwhelming. It's not something that makes a highlight film, but there's a reason that there are so many running backs in this league. You go, wow, that guy's not a very good runner. His stats aren't great. His yards per carry isn't great. But how does he keep getting in the game? Well, because he can catch the football out of the backfield, and most importantly, he can pass protect. And Nick Chubb, that has always been one of the great advantages of his game. As much as we know him and love him as a downhill, powerful, contact balanced runner, it's the pass protection that was able to keep him on the field for all 3 downs. So I do think he gets signed somewhere, and there are going to be teams that are interested to see how much juice is left in the tank. But if they sign him for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I do think it would be a boon to the Steelers running back room to have a guy of his caliber on and off the field joining that running back room. Let me take one more here for you. Kind of a little bit outside of the Rust Belt, entering his 4th year now. Quarterback Drew Aller has amassed 53 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions. He ran for 302 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2024. He's got the return of offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. He's got new perimeter weapons on offense. He's got a veteran offensive line in which they're going to plug in Cooper Cousins, who's going to be one of the best offensive linemen in the country. Aller is poised to elevate his performance and win the Heisman Trophy this year. What say you?
Ooh, that's not the direction that I thought you were going. I will call that an overreaction only because I think Penn State's running game is what's going to help make them to go again like it did last year. I will say this. I will parlay and say that if Drew Aller is going to win the Heisman, he's going to be undoubtedly the number 1 pick. I also think if Drew Aller wins the Heisman Trophy, he's probably going to lead Penn State to a national championship because I don't know if you've been watching a lot of the national shows. There's been one team that people are pegging to win the title this year, and that is Penn State because of what they return.
Correct.
I think the biggest thing that Drew Aller is going to have to learn is his vision on the field. There were a couple of times, I was in I actually went to the Ohio State game. I got a chance to watch it on the field when that was that big game that Penn State thought they were going to have up 10-0 early and it didn't happen. I think if Drew Aller can analyze the field a little bit better and become a little more accurate with his touch, again, he's a strong arm quarterback, but can you find touch on your football passes in areas that are contested catches? I think really then you're going to have a really great superstar quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the strength, but it's really the mental, it's the vision part of the game. I'll call an overreaction for now, Paul, but you're going to see him a lot in the top 3 to 5 projected Heisman Trophy winning picks, and it wouldn't shock me if he's rising on draft boards into the top 3 or 2 or even first pick come next year.
All of the physical tools you could possibly want at the quarterback position. But I agree, the footwork is sloppy. The field vision, the judgments, some of the decision making, it needs to be cleaned up. But this is going to be the first time he's got an offensive coordinator for consecutive seasons in his time at Penn State. So I think that's going to help him a lot. What also is the quarterback's best friend? The run game. And I think that because they have not one, but they have 2 spectacular NFL caliber tailbacks, that one will not more or less overshine the other. And I think that's why it's not going to be, well, this is Nick Singleton's team or this is Katron Allen's team. They're both going to look good, and everybody's going to say, well, it's Drew Aller is the straw that stirs the drink. So I'm rooting for him. I'm looking forward to it. We've got a minute. Do you have a quick one?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna go back to what we talked about with the Cavs from last segment. I'm gonna go the opposite way that you said. You think they're gonna trade one of their big four? I actually think this is the time for Cleveland to go all in. Assuming they lose this series, I think they're gonna make the biggest trade of the offseason and keep their core four and go all in next season. I don't think this team's kind of trying to break up anything.
Interesting. I think it's an overreaction, but we will see after tomorrow night, hopefully. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of us, for listening this morning. My name's Paul Adamczak. I'm signing off for Isaac Petcash and Rich Smith. Make sure to check out the Gem City Sports Podcast Network throughout the week. That's it. Have a great Monday. We'll see y'all next time.